Hello everyone. Today we will talk about polyandry. And before that, let me introduce our group. We are from group 2 and my name is Iza Shafi Ahnaf.
My name is Dikiran Setiawan.
My name is Hafid Gulam Ahmad. My name is Fastabikul Khairananda Islamuddin.
And let's jump to the definition.
In this video, we would like to present a cultural practice that may sound unfamiliar or even surprising to some of us. This cultural practice is called polyandry. When we talk about marriage, most of us automatically think about one man that marry one woman. That idea feels normal because it is what we are used to in our culture. However, not all societies organize relationships in the same way to us. Around the world, different communities develop different systems based on their needs, environment, and values. So, in this video, we will explore polyandry not as something that's strange, but as something that's meaningful within its own cultural context. Now, let's go to the definition of polyandry. Polyandry is a form of marriage where one woman has multiple husbands. It is actually a type of polygamy, but it is different from polygyny that we familiar with, which is one man that has multiple wives. One common form of polyandry is called fraternal polyandry, where a woman marries several brothers. This may sound unusual at first, but it exists as a structured and accepted system in certain societies. Now, why does this practice exist? Polyandry is commonly found in regions like Tibet and the Himalayan areas. These places have a very limited land and harsh environmental conditions. If each brother in a family married separately, the land would be divided into smaller and smaller parts, making it harder for everyone to survive. However, by marrying the same woman, the brothers can keep the land undivided and share the resources together. So instead of competing, they can cooperate. Now let's move to the cultural meaning. What does the cultural practice solve? Polyandry is not just about marriage. It is actually a solution to a survival problem. In areas where resources are scarce, this system helps families stay economically stable and maintain their land. Because multiple men support only one household, they can focus on protecting their resources and ensuring long-term sustainability. So, from this perspective, polyandry is not strange at all. It is practical and functional.
Now we will talk about the assumptions we make about this cultural practice. At first, we will think that this practice makes seem strange or even morally wrong because we live in a region where monogamous relationships are normal instead of polyandry relationship. But it is mostly just unfamiliar. In places like Tibet or the Himalayas, polyandry helps families survive on limited land. Harm only happens if the woman is forced, but that can happen in any marriage. The practice itself is not automatically harmful. We assume that monogamy is normal, that husband should be jealous and not share his wife, and that a woman with multiple husbands would bring shame. Those feelings come from my culture, not from my universal truth. Outsiders misunderstand because they only see something unusual and call it wrong without knowing the problem behind it. They don't ask why the practice exists. They judge based on their own culture, not on the needs of the people who practice it. Religion and Christianity teach monogamy. thought Islam allow polygyny for men, or marriage law say one husband and one wife. We also accept a man with many wives more easily than women with many husbands, which shows our culture favors men over a woman. Without context, it sounds crazy. One woman married to several brothers, but with context like limited land, harsh mountain, brothers sharing to survive, it sounds like a smart solution. Now for comparison, not exactly the same, but we have polygyny. For example, one man have many wives, especially among some Muslim Indonesia. And we have also nikah siri, where man takes a second wife secretly, but a woman with two husbands is completely unacceptable. It shows that Indonesian culture values more control and female exclusivity. A man can have many wives, but a woman cannot have many husbands. Himalayan culture values brotherhood cooperation and land preservation. Different problems lead to different solutions. It shows that normal is just what we are used to. A Tibetan woman would find our system strange because why would brothers fight over land when they can share one wife? There's no single normal way to live. Normal depends on where you are born and what problem you face. Some perceive harms are forcing the woman, jealousy among brothers, and confusion over which brother is the father of a child. But these are not guaranteed to happen. The same problem also happen in monogamous or polygynous marriage. The real harm is lack of freedom and respect, not the number of spouses. So, before we judge another culture, we need to stop and ask, am I just uncomfortable because it is different? Because discomfort is not bad and normal. Because we want to know what matters is choice, respect, and understanding the problem that practice tries to solve.
In this part of our presentation, I will focus on intercultural skills in understanding polyandry, especially in India, Tibet, and Bhutan. The first question is, how should a visitor or someone from another culture respond respectfully to this practice? A respectful response should begin with humility, curiosity, and open-mindedness. Instead of reacting with shock or immediately saying, that's weird, or we should first ask, why does this practice exist and what role did it play in the society? In this case of polyandry, this practice developed in areas where land was limited, resources were scarce, and survival depended on keeping family property together. So this was not simply about unusual marriage, it was also about economics, inheritance, and family stability. This kind of response shows intercultural competence according to Samovar and others. Intercultural communication means trying to understand another culture's worldview before judging it. So being respectful does not mean we must agree with everything. It means we listen first and judge later. The second question is, what reaction would be inappropriate or harmful? Some harmful reactions include laughing at the practice, calling it primitive, or assuming that it is immoral just because it is unfamiliar. These kinds of reactions are examples of ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism means judging another culture only through by the standards of our own culture. For example, if someone says this is wrong because marriage should only be between two people, they may think they are being objective, but actually the beliefs comes from their own cultural background. Different societies have developed different family systems depending on their history, geography, and values. And so the third question is, what would be an appropriate reaction? An appropriate reaction would be something like this. This practice is very different from what I know, but I want to understand why it developed and what it means in that culture. This reflects the idea of cultural relativism. Cultural relativism means understanding a cultural practice within its own social and historical context instead of judging it too quickly based on our personal values. It does not mean we have to accept everything without questions. It simply means understanding should come before condemnation. The fourth question is, which aspect of this practice is hardest to understand and why? For many people, the hardest part is understanding shared marital roles. In many modern societies, marriage is seen as a private and exclusive relationship between two individuals based on romantic love. Polyandry challenges that idea because it often puts family survival and household cooperation above personal romantic exclusivity. The fifth question is, did this practice change how we think about our own norms, such as family? I think yes, it can. Studying polyandry makes us reflect on our own assumptions. It makes us ask questions like,
Why do I think marriage should be monogamous? Why do I believe romantic love should always be the center of marriage? Why do I assume that my own family system is the most normal one? This is one of the most valuable parts of intercultural learning. It helps us realize that many of our beliefs are not universal truths, they are often shaped by our culture, religion, education, and social environment. In other words, what feels normal to us is often just what we are familiar with. The final question, how do power, history, or colonial perspective affect how cultures are judged? This is very important point. Historically, many non-Western cultural practices were judged by colonial powers as backward, uncivilized, or morally inferior. These judgments were not neutral. They were shaped by unequal power and by the idea that Western ways of life were more advanced or more correct because of this history. Practices like polyandry have often been misunderstood or stereotyped even today. Media and public discussion sometimes present unfamiliar cultural practices as shocking or bizarre without explaining the real social, environmental, and historical reasons behind them. That is why intercultural skills also require critical awareness. We should not only ask what is the practice, but also who is telling the story and from whose perspective is this culture being judged. So, to conclude, polyandry teaches us an important lesson about intercultural understanding. If we want to respond respectfully to cultural difference, we need curiosity, empathy, self-awareness, and critical thinking. We should avoid quick judgment and instead try to understand the deeper meaning and function of a practice in its own context.
Okay, next we talk about connection polyandry with personality and framing. Personality means that the way we see something depends on our background, our culture, religion, and personal experiences. For example, someone from a monogamous society might think polyandrous is strange or even wrong. But for people in certain Himalayan communities, it is a normal part of life. This is also related for framing, which is how something is presented. Polyandry is framed as a strange tradition. People may react negatively, but if it is explained as a strategy to protect family, land, and resources, then it becomes more understandable. In today's era of globalization, information about practices like polyandry spreads quickly through media and the internet. This can increase awareness, but it can also lead to misunderstanding if people do not consider the cultural context. Next, we have culture relativism and ethnocentrism. Cultural relativism means we try to understand a culture based on its own values. In the case of polyandry, It is often practiced to prevent land from being divided among many heirs, which helps families survive in areas with limited resources. On the other hand, ethnocentrism is when we judge other cultures using our own standards. For example, saying polyandry is wrong without understanding its purpose in an ethnocentric view. In intercultural communication, avoiding ethnocentrism is very important because it helps us become more open-minded and respectful toward other cultures. Another important concept is high context and low context cultures. Polyandry is usually found in high context cultures where tradition and shared understanding are very strong. People in this culture do not need to explain everything directly because social norms are already understood. In contrast, low context cultures, such as many Western societies, rely on clear and direct communication. Because of this, people from low context cultures may find polyandry confusing or difficult to accept. We can also understand polyandry through individualism and collectivism. Polyandry is closely related to collectivism, where the needs of the group are more important than individual desires. For example, in some communities, one woman marrying several brothers help keep family land together and support the entire family. Next is collective memory. This refers to shared experiences from the past that shape a community's behavior. In regions where land and resources are limited, people remember the problems caused by dividing land among many family members. Because of this shared memory, they continue practicing polyandry as a practical solution. Polyandry can be seen as a ritual that creates social stability. It is not only about marriage, but also about maintaining order in this family. Each husband may have specific roles, and this system helps reduce conflict and keep the family stable.